We want to kill roles, and we could want actually to kill any in-between layer who's trying to translate the word of entitlement into a business language because we think it's no longer needed.
It's a good transition topic to move from administering the system to ask anything from a user perspective. So kind of, I'd say, what is this capability and who would get access to it?
So our platform is designed to give access with visibility controls. And then I'll talk about that, how we ensure visibility or proper access restriction. It can be anything. It can be the business users. They are typically lost and they always call an help desk and say, I need permission to do something. And by the way, I would love to get everything that my friend has because that's actually what I have to do. They express their problem without talking about entitlement and application name. They don't say, I need SAP, I need Salesforce. They say, I need to do what John is doing. Well, minus that stuff that he's doing because, I don't have the permission. That's the way they express it. So the primary persona that is benefit from that simplification are the thousands of business users that today are complaining that these systems are complex, that the entitlement doesn't speak the language, and then you know what they do. They just call the help desk, they call the application owners, or in the case of access recertification, they just say, okay, click, who cares? I don't understand it, get it off my back. So business users are the primary benefit of that.
This is Identity at the Center. If it has anything to do with IAM, this is the go-to podcast. Now your hosts, Jim McDonald and Jeff Stedman.
Welcome to the Identity at the Center podcast. I'm Jim. I'm without Jeff today, but I have a fantastic guest, Andrea Rossi from IAMONES. And that's right, it's time for another Sponsor Spotlight episode. These special episodes are created in collaboration with our sponsor to delve more deeply into their viewpoints and specific solutions in the identity and access management market. To make this crystal clear, this is a fully sponsored episode. This allows us to provide you in-depth insights and expert perspectives straight from the source. And so, like I said, we have Andrea Rossi from IAMONES, a conversational identity governance platform that we're going to learn more about today. Their website is IAMONES.ai, and they have a special landing page for you, which I'll mention several times during the episode, IAMONES.ai/IDAC. Andrea, welcome to the Identity at the Center podcast. We're very happy to have you.
Thank you. My pleasure.
So our mutual friend, Marco Venuti, taught me the pronunciation. How close did I get it? IAMONES?
You're perfect. And say it IAMONES or IAMONES. That's the right pronunciation.
Okay. So what are all the other pronunciations that you hear? Because, I mean, honestly, when you look at the name, it looks like IAMONES, right? But that's not correct.
Yeah, there is a reason for the name we picked, but it's, basically all you want the customers and client and partners and the ecosystem to remember is that your name is not easy to pronounce, so it becomes stickier. So sometimes they say I am once, which is the typical reading point from an English standpoint, or otherwise the Spanish say jamones, like the prosciutto or the ham. So it's just a name that you can pronounce it actually the way you want, as long as you remember there is a company that does interesting things.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, IAMONES.ai/IDAC, spelled like IAM ones, ONES. And so if you go to that direct link, there's a special offer that Andrea and his company have put together, $5,000 off a subscription. So if it's something that you're going to explore after this podcast is over and after you've heard about all the great things they do, make sure you go to that link and get your discount. A little bit more about the name, because I don't want to breeze by this, but Andrea, how did you come up with the name IAMONES?
So when we created the company, I have a basic rule, which is even before establishing the company, you have to find a good name, and the name has to mean something to you. So I decided to put together my two passions in that name. The first one is identity and access management, because I've been in this domain for 20 years. I founded a company called Cross ADS and then sold to IBM. So I've seen all the original sins that I'm trying to fix today. And the other part of the name is, I was born in 67, and I was born and raised with punk and rock and roll. So the other part of the name comes from the Ramones, and that's why the pronunciation is Yamones. And why that name? Not just because I love that band that created punk rock, but because the Ramones took a boring genre, sort of rock and roll, songs lasting 7 minutes, complex lyrics, and made it fun. Songs were 1 minute and a half and quite melodic. So what we're trying to do into the IGA experience is a lot like what the Ramones brought to rock and roll: fast, fun, and simple.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, this space, the IAM or digital identity space, is kind of famous for having unique names of companies. I remember the first IAM product that I worked with was Oblix, and we had to go and get business approval to spend a lot of money to get Oblix and implement it with a equally funny name, a system integrator at the time that no longer exists called Entology. But getting all of that money approved when you don't know the name, it can be interesting interplay, but that's what you've got in this space. I mean, some of the most famous names that exist out there today, if they weren't famous already, they sound kind of funny. So, but I'm thinking about the Ramones. What was their most famous song?
Well, the most famous song was Blitzkrieg Pop, which most of the people don't know by that name, but the "Hey Ho, Let's Go" slogan inside it. So that was for sure the quintessential famous Ramones song, and that's basically the song that everybody knows, not even knowing that's by the Ramones.
Yeah. So I have to admit I cheated a little bit. So I was expecting you to give that answer, but I also saw another song which I remember called "I Want to Be Sedated," and I also saw another song called "Gabba Gabba Hey," and I wanted to. I mean, it seems like that would be a perfect fit. Gabba Gabba kind of sounds like yada yada. It's language. What you're doing is bringing the large language model to a traditional space like identity governance and administration. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, yes, Gabba Gabba it's actually the first presentation that we had. So when we got out of stealth, we went at the Kuppinger and Cole EIC event in Berlin. It was June last year. The company is very young. We basically exist since April last year. And my first speech was Gabba Gabba IAM. And it was an attempt to say we're disrupting something with conversation and with simplicity. And yeah, we say that we use large language model, and we'll get into that, but essentially we are allowing to conversate with the system rather than programming, coding a system to do what you want to do. And that's this type of simplicity and ease of use that we're trying to bring into this very complex domain of IGA.
Yeah, so that's starting to get us to the elevator pitch, but why don't we get right to it? What does IAMONES do? What makes the product unique?
So we essentially are unique on two aspects. First of all, every interaction that a business user, an auditor, an IAM administrator, a third party, is the only way to access the system is just by asking questions. any question in your mother tongue, as we say. It doesn't have to be in English, it can be in any language, even dialect. So for the first time, the UI adapts to you rather than you having to adapt to UI where you don't know exactly where to navigate, where to click, what label is right. That's the first thing that sets us apart. The second part is we went a little further because I think that this conversational UI will become the standard in software industry 12 months from now. So we made another thing. We said we also want the system to be configurable or to operate according to natural language instructions. So you tell the system as we speak, this operational duty policy, it's that permission. If it's with that permission for that department, then there is a risk which is made this and that. So it's like explaining what to do to a human. And same applies for anything in the platform. And that's a configuration of how the system, the IAMONES identity brain, resonates on your data. And what I mean by your data, I mean the data that are represented by user account permission roles, a bunch of data which is sitting on-prem in legacy application that we are able to augment and give life again.
So you say you augment that legacy IAM application, you don't replace it.
No. I think that clients have gone through blood, sweat, and tears of implementing provisioning. Okay, you could call it IGA, identity, but I've seen plenty of clients. They've gone through very painful implementation of connectors with hundreds of applications. And maybe when it comes to security controls or workflow, they do very little, but they spend a fortune integrating. So it would be stupid to say, don't reuse that stuff. So we tap into the existing traditional platforms. I don't want to call them legacy. Be the SailPoint, One Identity, Save It. And, we take that data out, we enrich that data, and we make it available for, inquiring and reasoning with the natural language that I just told you.
Yeah, you're taking all these AI tools and making them available to these, whether you want to use the term or not, I'll say the legacy identity infrastructure that's in place today. So obviously, I think that you're the ideal client for you is a company that already has a identity system in place, an IGA system in place. Talk to me a little bit more about what is the ideal client for IAMONES.
So the ideal client is a large enterprise that has implemented some sort of identity management. Maybe, they implemented Oracle IDM years ago. Maybe they have gone through SailPoint, IAQ, or One Identity or Savient, or maybe they are going to more SaaS version, but they have gone through a program of implementing IGA to some extent. So they have a platform where integration are set and we can augment what they already have. So for the time being, our target clients are large and mature enterprises.
I noticed on your website that it's right at the very top says, enter the age of conversational identity. And I feel like that's a pretty bold statement. It's what I think we all want to do, right? Or we're all excited about that possibility. I put a post on LinkedIn. It was actually a poll. And I said, why isn't this there? And I got a lot of, yes, our product does that, X, Y, and Z. And here, go to this. I said, every time someone would say this, they send me a video. And then I go and, I felt like for the most part, they're seeing a lot of vaporware. So are we really there at this age of conversational identity?
Well, first of all, conversational identity is a nickname we came up with because it's we need to call the way we do, which is essentially a new software stack with new ingredient, and the new ingredient is large language model. We need to give it a name. And initially we call it generative identity, but then a partner here in Europe said, well, it's all about conversation. So call it conversational identity. And so we created that nickname because for us it's our DNA. We had a very distinct luxury. We could build the platform ground up with that ingredient. Most of the established players, it's hard for them because they have an engine which is built on traditional software, pre-AI, and they probably are patching some use cases with a bit of AI. So we wanted to have ourselves qualified with the new branding because I think there's going to be a refresh in the industry, not just identity. The software industry will be disrupted by a new way of building software applications, specifically in B2B. And there is a nice interview by the Microsoft CEO and chairman that basically says that where today a lot of business logic is hard-coded into code, and it's a bunch of crud, read, delete, update into a database, all that logic, which is now software with rule-based configuration where rules are sitting maybe in a database, is going to be replaced by agents. And an agent is essentially a mini large language model that does a business function, but where you used to have 20 developers to code that logic, now you have one LLM engineer that does it in a week. You have other problems to fix, but the productivity, it's phenomenal. I think I read this article also from Sam Altman that, within their club, there is the bet of who's going to be the first one-man company at the $1 billion valuation.
Right.
Of course, that a bit extreme, but that's the my take on the. I went a bit too long into the conversation, but that's the nuance behind it.
No, it's revolutionary thinking, and it's something that I think we're all wondering, how's this all going to play out? Is this going to be one day we walk into work and we don't need 20 people, we just need one? Or is it going to happen over time and is there going to be an evolution into this? I think it's going to be more evolutionary. I think that one person running $1 billion company will come sooner than we think because a lot of roles within the company can be done using AI, or large parts of our job could be done using AI. So why not be able to create a company that, makes those roles available to others? So I don't think it's that crazy. And then plus inflation, $1 billion, we'll all be billionaires here pretty soon.
Yeah, and there is one of just one side comment. I think I heard one time that AI will replace all the boring tasks. And honestly, what is most boring than approving, certifying entitlements from managers that don't like that to be done? So they would love to delegate to something that says, follow my guidelines, write in natural language, and approve it for me. So we are exactly on a spot where AI can replace boring tasks too. And that's why we think that IGA is well spot on to be simplified and rejuvenated by what we do or what is happening in the market.
My son is a second year college cybersecurity major, and I asked him, are you learning AI? And he's very little, very, very little. And I kind of feel like that has been the university model where it's kind of lagging behind where things are going by a couple of years. And then they do catch up. But I said to him, I'm like, this is the area you need to focus on because your career will be using AI to get things done. And that is how you are going to differentiate yourself in this crowded marketplace. Even though we say, hey, there's a lack of talent in this cybersecurity space, there's a lack of knowledgeable talent, right? People who have experience. If somebody's coming right out of college, there are plenty of people who don't know what they do, don't know how to do it, looking for cybersecurity jobs. I think that for him and for other people who are in college, it's like that's the area to focus on is AI. But we're throwing around this term AI, and that's what I think happens in the industry so much is, now with 50% more AI, we joke around that it's kind of just become marketing buzz, and creating like business intelligence reports is called AI. And what I think the general public think of with AI is what you're starting to see more with like, even Google searches, and you think of with OpenAI, if you've gone out to ChatGPT, is this large language model, it's generative AI. You talk about the large language model. You don't talk about AI in that generic sense as much. Is that right? I mean, are you looking to make sure that people understand this isn't just, just like a veneer?
Yeah, if you read to our presentation marketing material, we don't use the word AI because the word AI is overabused. So we say we use large language model, so which is a subdomain of AI, but it's the most interesting one because that's the part that we really replace boring tasks that now human are made, and that will also replace a lot of jobs. I know it's not nice to say, but that will happen. A lot of interaction we have with clients, they're asking questions reflecting the way they are using that stuff today through Gemini or GPT, which is not the way we do. We use the ingredient to rebuild a B2B software stack, and that's a new part that clients still have to be adapted with, understanding that their B2B products will be rebuilt with a new ingredient, and they will become easier. So we are in a transitioning moment, and will it happen overnight? We're moving to a UI where you just add things or system that can be configured in natural language? No, for a simple reason. The software market we know, with the UI done in a certain way, with coding done in a certain way, has 50 years. But it won't take 5 years. It will take 2 years. So the revolution will be dramatically faster because you see, and they are taken by surprise. So university and colleges are taken by surprise. Companies are taken by surprise. And so they try to stop the flood with one finger, say, don't do that, don't do that. But in reality, it's so bloody convenient that it's impossible to stop. And I think that convenience wins. And what we do is just convenient.
I couldn't agree more. Okay, I want to really drill into the solution. So we're talking about large language model for your existing IGA implementation. So as an administrator of an IGA system, I've got to do back-end work. I've got to configure the system, create policies, etc., create roles. As a user of the system, I need to interact and get things done. I might need to request access for somebody that works for me. I may or may not know the access. So those are the two areas: IGA configuration using large language model, and IGA user. And I think you call this ask me anything via large language model. So first, I'd love to dig into the IGA configuration with large language models. So let's stick there for a minute if we could. What is this, and why is it helpful for the company that has an existing IGA infrastructure?
So say that you have implemented your traditional IGA and you spent blood, sweat, and tears. It's connected to 200 applications. And you have a wealth of data, user permission requests, the roles that you have created in your legacy. Now, one of the issues, it's really reasoning or doing stuff on those data and say, I need to implement a very complex separation of duty policy. I need to implement a very sophisticated security policy that tells me every permission which has been granted for less than 2 minutes and belong to a list of privileged permission, and then the guy might also have another permission. These type of complex correlation policies are basically impossible to implement in traditional identity platform. This is just the example of security policies, which is, again, typically one of the things you would like to do with traditional software, but you can't. So in our case, you take everything which I said and you say, all right, so the security policy that I want to apply is if a user has this list of permissions out of this application, and you name the permission and you name the application as you call them, as they are stored in the database as their name. And if you say, if this permission has been granted and revoked and lasted less than 2 minutes, then it's suspicious. So this type of what I just described, it's a complex instruction in natural language that you give to us, and we are able to reason on your data that we take and extract out of your legacy platform. That's a complex use case of configuration. A very simple one, it's enriching descriptions of your permissions. So your permission out of SAP, Salesforce, whatever, are stored in SailPoint. There is the permission name, and then there is no description. Why? Because the application owners hate to contribute to description. So imagine that in our platform, you allow the application manager to upload their spreadsheet, their manual, the document where already have spent tens of time what that entitlement does. And our system takes it and populates the data, and that enriches semantically the description without you to wait a month and probably spending under 50,000 euro of process consulting and upload of data. So this is the simplest instruction, one of the simplest example of instructing the system to do something in natural language. Just upload a file, name, description, and the system crunches and pretty much like a human. You give that and say, all right, got it, I'm going to do it. The other example of a security policy is probably on the more complex side of instructing it. All these instructions in natural language are basically something that we funnel into our identity brain. And it does the reasoning, combining these instructions with your data, and your data coming from your legacy data. Okay? There's no magic here. It's reasoning on data. Data is oil, and that's why we take your existing data and we are able to amend them with reasoning. And the two examples I gave are just a very, two simple examples of what we mean by configuring the system. And
yeah,
the benefits are, sorry.
I think that second simple example, I mean, you can make a business case just on that. We need to do a data cleanup because, our roles are meaningless. I'm just going to go and look at all of our roles that we have, all of our entitlements, and I'm going to have AI help me put together descriptions. And rather than asking you for a 6-month project to go through each one and go back to the business owner and ask him, what is this? And he says he doesn't know. And we go back and forth. I'm going to have AI try to figure it out and give me some sample text. I'm going to send it to the business owner and say, this, yes or no.
You might not want even to ask the business owner. The business owner says, listen, I have this 50 pages PDF, which I wrote 3 years ago. Nobody reads to it, but this has the magic of everything. Now, what we do through the digestion technique of LLM is to say, all right, we are able to read the manual, distill a description that fits into an entitlement readable on screen, and maybe do other magic, something like, I'm an auditor, explain me that permission with my language. No, I'm the IAM administrator, explain me with a broader description and give me more technical background. You're right. Honestly, today, sometimes we start with, we can do magic here and there. There's a lot of value in augmenting semantic description of permission, job titles, roles, because once they are described properly, LLM can reason on it. And that's the very simple, and you're right, there are clients that are just mesmerized by the idea that you can generate description, summarize description out of manuals that have been sitting there for ages. And then they will start thinking the magic they can do on policy and securities. We do it today. Sometimes we're limiting our capability because they say, too nice to be true. Go one step at a time.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that comes to my mind is that all the things that excited me that I talked about, what you just talked about there with the manual, those things should all be done manually, right? We can go through them and figure it out. But why spend hours on these things when you could potentially do them in minutes and offload it to the large language model to figure out? I mean, you go onto the web and you're thinking, I'm going to research something. The old way to do it, you start clicking through links and try to find where you can find good information. Now the first thing you get back is a summary answer right in Google that kind of like lays it out for you. So why wouldn't you want to bring that kind of horsepower to your IGA system as well? I kind of feel
inevitable.
Like it's inevitable, right? It is going to happen. And I think what you're here to say today is that you can have it now. I think a lot of this is about outcomes, right? You need to be able to make your system do certain things that you want to achieve. Least privilege, for example. You want to achieve giving people the entitlements that they need, nothing more, nothing less. And I think the industry's approach for a long time was role-based access control. You see it shifting more towards policy-based access control. But again, to me, where the rubber hits the road is like, how long does it take to get your system to do that? And who can do it? Who has the technical know-how to take the business outcomes that you want to drive and turn them into policies that this system can apply to the data to drive those outcomes?
So talking about roles or RBAC or PBAC, I mean, these are all attempts to translate a very simple problem that we have in our identity governance domain. There are a lot of technical entitlements out of the different applications, and they are all very cryptic names, no descriptions. And then there is a plethora of business users that are speaking just a different language. So SAP transaction XYZ means placing orders for raw material on the user side. For ages, role was an attempt to bridge the translation gap. And the principle of saying, I'm going to aggregate permission and give it a meaningful business name was the only way available up until large language model. The only issue out of that, and I think you know it well, we got the paradox that now there are companies with more roles than people. And you say, okay, I don't get it. Roles were supposed to be a fraction of people. And now you're sort of, there's a role explosion that costs me millions a year to consultants who are maintaining, reviewing that. We want to kill that. That's an old practice. If we say, if you have a proper description in every business object attached in your database, we call it temporal identity graph, and there is a description for entitlement for roles, proper description, now we can reason on them. And do you need policy? I'll be honest with you, less and less, because the system can say, this is a guy from the IT department. No, let's put it the other way around. This is a guy from the marketing department, and he has 3 permissions with a description that it means marketing. And then 1 description that means privileged data administrator. It doesn't make any sense. And, it's like if you read it, it says, it can't be. There is a violation in principle. Is there a policy for that? No. That's one of the examples of something that we get out of our platform, and we call it a coherence check. If a description doesn't match with your job function, alert. Now, that's not even a policy. It's the coherence check without any configuration. In the old days, policy, click, rules here and there. So we want to kill roles, and we could want actually to kill any in-between layer who's trying to translate the word of entitlement into a business language because we think it's no longer needed.
It's a good transition topic to move from administering the system to ask anything from a user perspective. So I'd say, what is this capability and who would get access to it?
So our platform is designed to give access with visibility controls. And then I'll talk about that, how we ensure visibility or proper access restriction. It can be anything. It can be the business users. They are typically lost and they always call an help desk and say, I need permission to do something. And by the way, I would love to get everything that my friend has because that's actually what I have to do. They express their problem without talking about entitlement and application name. They don't say, I need SAP, I need Salesforce. They say, I need to do what John is doing. Well, minus that stuff that he's doing because, I don't have the permission. That's the way they express it. So the primary persona that is benefit from that simplification are the thousands of business users that today are complaining that these systems are complex, that the entitlement doesn't speak the language, and then you know what they do. They just call the help desk, they call the application owners, or in the case of access recertification, they just say, okay, click, 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 who cares? I don't understand it, get it off my back. So business users are the primary benefit of that. Auditors, if you think about how much time auditors are asking, tell me about this, tell me about that, I want a report. And you have these poor IAM administrator folks that they need every day to extract data, to create a new report, new columns, new stuff. This stuff is gone. You say, dear auditor, that's my system. Ask any question. And also, the auditor might say, let me check if this violation took place in the past. So auditor, risk manager, security people having to control the posture are, I would say, the secondary beneficiaries of this. But the reality, also traditional IAM administrator, once they see how to create a security policy, they will say, wow, I'm going to jump on it because instead of waiting a month and spending, an avalanche of money, I can do it myself. It's my PDF. It's written properly. And in fact, we say the PDF, the natural language, is the new code. And I think that clients and consultants will have to pay more attention to what they write in the documents because they will get into the reasoning, cycle. So that's the beneficial. Again, business user, auditors, for sure, these are the two audiences that are screaming for just asking things in their language, and the system to adapt and understand their language instead of having the other way around where you need to make sure that you ask things in the way that the system understands. So
is Jamon's going to be smart enough to say, okay, here comes Jim, and he is a business user, and he can do X, Y, and Z. But here's Andrea. He's the system administrator, and he can do everything, A through Z. How will it know to restrict that? Does it leverage the permissions that were set up in the legacy, or is this something you train the system on?
No, there is no training, and that's an important remark to make. There is no training learning period with our software. You plug into your data, and in 2 minutes, you're able to inquire them in natural language and give natural language instruction. So how do we ensure that the right people are seeing the right data and asking the right question? And I'll tell you more. We also need to make sure that tricky questions are blocked.
Yeah.
So what are the attributes that we use to segment the visibility on data, and what I mean by data, I mean your IGA data that might be sitting on SailPoint. And also, how do you ensure that some questions like risk checking, security check type of questions, a business user can't test them? We had to develop what we call an LLM firewall, which is essentially is an LLM model that does just the tasks of, saying you can't ask this question, or yes, you can ask this question, but just on the data, you're the finance department. You go there, you go here. So we call it LLM firewall, and it's a crucial component for ensuring, again, not just visibility of data, but now we're asking questions. So we need to make sure that we block some type of question. And what I mean by some type is that the model can understand that you're asking a question about, is John violating the least privilege policy? You understand that the question is about risk violation, and the system can be configured, again, in natural language to say, if the guy is a business user, then he can't ask that question. Where do we take these attributes out of the IGA data? Because there is always the job function, the department. We can augment, the tagging, but essentially, the LLM firewall resonates on the attributes that we take out of existing legacy.
Yeah, that's important. I'd love to see kind of how that works in action. And I want to remind people that if they are interested in everything we've been talking about, they want to see a demo, go to IAMONES.ai/IDAC. It's IAMONES.ai/IDAC. You've got a code on there to get a discount, but I'm sure they'd be more than happy to spend some one-on-one time with you and set up a demo. I think this is all really great. One thing that I kind of felt all along, because when I look at large language model technology, I kind of feel like the back end is a big piece of that. It's the graph database. Am I onto something, or is that just not as important as I'm making it out to be?
So the word graph in the world of AI comes out very often. So in the way what we mean by graph, so where we store the data coming out of legacy system, we call it temporal identity graph. Why graph and why temporal? Graph because it's a design. The entities are users, account permissions are nodes, and then there are relationships. Okay, like a user has been assigned a permission. No, it's been revoked. So all these are connections, pretty much like a LinkedIn network or a next type of, I follow that person that has this interest and stuff. One of the reasons why graph is important, it's not much today on the LLM space, because actually the data could be sitting in any database. You query them, you retrieve the data as a text, and the LLM reasons on the output of a query to a database. The value of why we have designed the data model to be a graph model, it's not for now, it's for the next AI ingredient we will be adding, which is not even on the website because we didn't want to sound too foolish, but that's a bit of a roadmap. We're going to use another deep learning neural network model, which is not LLM. It's called Temporal Graph Network, and it does good prediction on a time evolving graph. What is prediction for? Well, this permission might be useful for that person. This permission, it's likely to be added, and that could be a risk as it happened for the other guy. So in order to make prediction on a time evolving graph model, LLMs are not good. You need another AI ingredient, another subdomain or model out of this complicated word that too often people just refer to it as AI. AI is an archipelago of models, and you need to pick what suits best to your needs. And that's why you don't find much AI buzzwording into our communication.
You saved me from asking a question about the future, so we can put that off to the side. It sounds like the temporal. What did you call it again? Temporal.
It's temporal identity graph. It's basically because we store a timeline of information.
Okay, so that's where you're going. I did want to talk a little bit about, you talked earlier about the IAMONES sits as a enhancer to the existing identity infrastructure. So I think that's kind of key from a infrastructure standpoint or from a starting off standpoint. So if I say, all right, this is something I'm interested in, they go to the website, iamones.ai/IDAC, they get the demo, decide to buy it, then what? They start the 1-year project to implement it?
No, it starts 5 to 35 minutes project, and it works this way. We have a piece of software which is non-AI. It's called the Identity Gateway, and it connects to your data source. If it's a standard one, like say point one identity and so forth, we have predefined integrations. What that does, it takes the data out of your system and also start tracking change events and store them into our temporal identity graph. What I mean by our doesn't mean that it has to be on our cloud. It can be even hosted on your premises or your AWS Azure region. That normalizing the data takes 30 minutes, as long as you plug into your system. Then the only other thing you have to do is go on our actual platform that you're going to get through the IDAC page, and you activate your tenant, 30 seconds. And then get tenant will point to your temporal identity graph. So all in all, if you want to add conversational capabilities of inquiring your data, it takes 30 minutes, 1 hour, depending on how much time you take to connect to your environment. And then if you want to start adding instructions, maybe it takes another 1 hour just to practice, depending on the type of instruction you want to build. Data enrichment, super simple. You might already have a PDF somewhere that has that description. You upload it in the system, and we do the magic of understanding and extending your data.
For large enterprises, I'm assuming they normally start with a pre-production environment, test things out there, make sure that they feel like, okay, we're safe, and then move it into production or then implement it into their production environment.
Yeah, technically, we start a pilot, call it whatever you want. We basically tap into non-production data that might be also anonymized or a subset of their large set of identities. They subscribe to the tenant, and we point our SaaS platform to that database that contains the data taken from the non-production. And the day they switch it, we basically point the reasoning to the database that has the copy, so to say, out of their production data.
So you have existing customers.
Yes.
What are you hearing back from them? What are the benefits? And then how do they gauge their success?
Well, at the moment, what the clients are looking, especially the IAM administrator people, they're just trying to get their business users off their back. So now the measurement of success is given to the business user a UI where they just ask questions and they just get an answer without having to call the IAM administrator that then has to waste time, or the application owners, to try to translate those questions they have into the right permission that might look into the catalog. So today, it's all about convenience. And if you think about the reporting issue, so imagine today you have your business user and they want a report. Well, if it's not there, you have to create it. And then they say, well, I want that extra column, and you have to add that extra column. With us, you say, Give me the list of permission belonging to the finance department. Boom. Well, add me the department column. Boom. Please reply in German because I have subsidiary in Germany. Boom. Period. So the business users benefit from that because it's just ask. But the IAM administrator get all the burden of following all the requests out of business user for stupid things like an extra report, an extra column, an extra language. That's all gone. There's no longer the multi-language UI is gone with large language model. In our system, we also make fun. We ask questions in local dialects in Italy, in Germany, and the system replies in the local dialect, which makes the demo very funny. But think about a company that has, our client in US, the first one who was on board, I think they have, Spanish, English, and few European countries' languages. How do you maintain a multi-UI into SailPoint? That's what they have. Well, it costs. For us, it's gone. So that's the biggest benefit today that clients are looking, okay? Get the business users out of their back, giving them something easy that they can play with.
Yeah, that's a benefit I didn't even think about. Like, I guess I intuitively knew when you're talking about like language support for all these different languages, like, oh yeah, well, AI has already taken care of that for you, like the OpenAI model. And so if you're taking that model and you're applying it, then you get it. But now business benefit, if you have been having to maintain UIs the old way in multiple languages, I mean, that's no longer. You just have a prompt, figures out who the person is, sends them, and they start asking questions in the language that they know, and it understands the questions. I mean, that feels like a revolutionary impact. I'm going to ask you a little bit of a fun question now, because I'm feeling the benefit, but I'm also used to using like AI for trying to research things and then getting answers that you later find out are made up, hallucinations, if you will. Do you suffer from hallucinations with IAMONES?
The beginning, 12 months ago, the company started the technology well before we founded the company. That was April last year. Yeah, a lot. At the beginning, we said, well, LLM will do magic. So we take data out of the IGA legacy data and we'll give a bunch of instructions, throw everything there, and the system will get it. No way. No way. Maybe we get there one day, but not in the coming years. So in order to prevent hallucinations, because we were giving too much information, we said, well, let's make like the humans do. Just tell everybody you have a bunch of people and you say, I pick you because you're very good in reasoning on sensory evaluation. You're very good in translating natural language to data retrieval query from the database. And each one is a specific task. And with that, strict guardrail, a lot of context, and task specific, we have avoided hallucination. Yeah, not avoided. I mean, it's like bugs. You always have a minority of hallucinations. But, at the beginning, it was the problem. Now it happens, one time every 6 months, okay? And then it's easy to fix because it's like adding extra context and eventually making the guardrail narrower. So this practice of taking the big elephant and eating it bite by bite, it's going to become the standard when you develop business software application. And it's essentially, if you look at legacy or pre-AI software stacks, there are components of code that does components of business logic. The new AI stack, it's those business components of business logic are nothing more than instructions or prompts, guardrails given to an LLM. And what I mean by LLM, us, we work across LLM. So we're not tied to a specific one. Although today we use a combination of OpenAI and Anthropic Sonnet. But, we are going to replace some tasks with some other LLM. Why we do that? because these horizontal LLMs, they improve and they become cheaper and faster. So, but long story short, the way to prevent hallucination is you give very guided restriction to mini LLM, each performing a single task within what we call the identity brain. And the funny note is the guy who has developed that is my fellow shareholder, head of AI. He's 24. He has no experience whatsoever in software. And actually, that's what I wanted. Otherwise, they just go back complaining about the good old days where you can programmatically do everything. Yeah, but it takes 6 months.
Interesting stuff. Well, Andrea, this has been a really interesting episode. I want to remind people again, IAMONES, IAMONES.ai/IDAC for more information to take the next step in exploration on this journey. There's also going to be a lot of links in the show notes, including the link to that PCU that you talked about with Satya Nadella, the AI agents. I think that's absolutely fascinating, and I think people can easily go down a rabbit hole with the whole AI agents and how things are going to be in the future. Our tradition on the show is to end things with a lighter note. Andrea, you're in Italy. You're an Italian. What city are you in now, or what are you closest to that we may know?
Close to Bologna, which is the city of Ducati, Ferrari, Lamborghini. So I live in the mechanical valley. So as a software guy, I'm in a beautiful place, but not the right one typically. Actually, I live nearby. So I live in a town called Imola. It's spelled IMOLA, which is famous for the F1 racetrack. There are two in Italy. One is Monza, near Milan, and the other one is here in my hometown, Imola. So north of Italy, close to Bologna. Simple.
Okay. So here's my question for our later note is I love travel. Talking with you, you love travel. A trip to Italy is on my bucket list. I probably would go somewhere between 1 week and 2 weeks long. How should I spend that time? I want to tell you, of course, I want to eat good food. I mean, that's going to be a mainstay, and drink good wine, but I also want to not just go to one place and sit there for the whole time. I want to bounce around and really have the Italian experience. So what do you recommend?
Well, first, I wouldn't recommend you to visit the big cities because that's where you get the crappy food. So if you're looking for good food and good wine, don't go to Milan. Maybe come to Bologna, the main city. Don't go to Florence. Don't go to Venice. Don't go to Rome. Go in the countryside. Then you might decide whether to experience more of a northern experience of Italy, which means Tuscany upwards, Veneto, Piemonte. I mean, the upper part, where the cuisine is different, or go to the south, like Sicily, Puglia, or around Naples. But definitely, if you want to enjoy good food, don't go to the big tourist cities because, you get average or well below average. So there are a lot of places. Italy, it's food experience everywhere. And, when you plan to come, I'll get you a ring and you might come and visit here. There are nice places here where I live and good food, good wine. Actually, the region, the part of the country where I live, Emilia-Romagna, it's known for, the prosciutto, and it's good everywhere. But here we are sort of well known for balsamic vinegar, for example. So I'll be your guide here. No worries.
That sounds great. What time of year should I come?
Well, it's generally very hot in the summer, so I would tell you skip July and August. October is phenomenal. April, March is phenomenal as well. But I tell you what, this year has been a specifically, we'll say, harsh winter. Not as harsh as upstate New York, but not the mild one we used to know. But typically, if you want to come to Italy over January, February, that's phenomenal. Most of the tourists are not here. So again, really off the beaten track, January, February, right after Christmas. Or otherwise, you come October, late September. And that's phenomenal.
That sounds like great advice. I'm very excited for when I make that trip, and you and my friend, our mutual friend Marco, will be the first people I tap for sharpening the pencil on the itinerary.
We're all very close.
Yeah, I very much appreciate the advice, and I very much appreciate your time today. Just want to go over a couple of things, which is, again, IAMONES.ai/IDAC. You can also visit our website, idacpodcast.com, and you can watch all of our episodes on idacpodcast.tv. Thank you, everyone, for listening or watching, and we'll catch you all on the next one.
All right.
You've been listening to Identity at the Center. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit the website at identityatthecenter.com. See you next time on Identity at the Center.